All right, boys and girls, today, David Feiss, creator of Cow and Chicken, on this t-shirt, one of the greatest shows ever made for Cartoon Network. David, how are you, sir?
I'm doing really well.
So when I reached out to I think it was your agent at the first time, I never thought that one, we'd connect, and two, I'd be able to talk to one of the guys that made me laugh more with a cartoon about a fictitious cow and a chicken and a red guy and parents that were just legs, waist, and feet. I mean, we'll go pretty in depth, I hope, with Cow and Chicken. But how did this idea come about?
Okay, well, it actually did start as a bedtime story to my daughter, who was 6 at the time. I used to read to her every night, and there was one night I was tired and I didn't want to even turn on the light. Mm-hmm. So I came up with the story of Cow and Chicken.
Yeah.
I told her the story. There was like, it wasn't a brother and sister at the time. It was just the story of Cow and Chicken. She liked it. The next morning, I actually drew it out. I thought, yeah, it's kind of fun. So I drew it out, and that was the genesis of it. And then I drew it out like as a children's book. We never published, but within a few weeks after telling her this story, I'd gotten, because of my contact with Hanna-Barbera, I'd gotten a call saying that this new network, Cartoon Network, was looking for new ideas, and I had this new idea. So I met with the recruiter, or the development person actually at the Cartoon Network. We met at a coffee shop, and I had these sketches for a Cow and Chicken story, and she really liked it. And she said, I think we like this. So I developed it later into as a story for Cartoon Network. I changed it to their brother and sister. They live in a house with a mom and dad, and I made the joke of them not having tops. Basically, that came from old Warner Brother cartoons. Sometimes you see Tom and Jerry, or
Yeah.
You never saw the parents, you never saw the adults, only legs. But my joke was they didn't have tops.
I mean, it's a fantastic. I like the little nod, and you'd said, when I go and research you guys, I try to watch any interviews you guys might have had, read anything. Google and Wikipedia is fantastic, as well as YouTube. I mean, it makes things so much easier than it used to be. And one of the things I read was your first real big gig was working for Hanna-Barbera right out of high school.
That's true. Yeah, I was 19. I was hired at 19.
I mean, before we even go down that road, what was your favorite cartoon from that Hanna-Barbera run, or from Cartoon Network, its illustrious career?
For Hanna-Barbera, I guess it would, I liked Huckleberry Hound. Mm-hmm. I liked I liked everything. I was a big Flintstone fan, big Jetsons fan. And it wasn't like I sought out Hanna-Barbera because I was a fan. It was just like, it was through circumstances. I wanted to be an animator.
Yeah.
I'd been making 8mm films, as a teenager. So my idea was to go to Los Angeles and work at a studio. So but I just had an opportunity through a contact that to have an interview at Hanna-Barbera. So I came down with my 8mm projector to project. I didn't know how it was done. I didn't know about portfolios. So literally I went in with this old projector, it wasn't old then, this projector, and I projected my movie against the wall at Hanna-Barbera. And they ended up hiring me from that. I got very lucky.
Did they like the fact that you had already, it wasn't just a portfolio or collages? These days everybody just emails pictures. Were they impressed when you brought your projector and put it on the wall and was showing them shit, or were they just like, what's this guy doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, it would be like, this is kind of weird, It's like, but I didn't know that. I thought that was the way you did it. And at the time, there was no video cassettes. You couldn't just pop a cassette in, so I didn't know any other way. And it was at that time, it was my first sound movie too. I animated Maxwell Silver Hammer from the Beatles.
Yeah.
So I put pictures to that song. So I figured out how to cut, break the music down and animated this thing. So I think it was just circumstances. Like they saw somebody that was young and like really eager, and they also had a position for me. There was like that you'd fit right into this, working with this guy. It was a guy named Ken Mundy, and I worked with him directly. He was like my mentor. He was this older guy, and yeah, it was like a perfect school for me.
Yeah.
It worked out really well. Yeah.
I mean, when it started out as a story because you didn't want to, get on the book, turn off,
Yes.
what have you. With that first story, was it just cow and chicken, or did you have any of those supporting characters, those supporting roles built into that story for your daughter?
It was just cow and chicken, and
Just
they
cow
were
and chicken.
yeah, yeah. And I was looking at I have the original book that I did, like the pages. Like if you're interested, I could show it to you too.
Oh, 100%.
So,
Whenever you'd like to. Yeah.
okay. Do you want to do it right now?
Surprise me. It's up to you, man. You're the
Okay,
captain of the
maybe
ship.
open this up. Yeah, because I have this uh, some JPEGs. All right, let me share my screen. Oh, I'm disabled from sharing.
Hold on 1 second. There we go. Should be able to do it now. I hope.
You see it?
Oh yeah, that is fantastic.
Okay, that's it. That was it. That was actually the first drawing. And like the next morning, I got up and drew that. So they they do look like what they ended up looking like
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit. No, to tell you the truth, that this is not what I do the next morning. This is my development time. So
Okay.
I do have the book. This is just some development stuff I did. Once the Cartoon Network, Hanna-Barbera had decided they were interested in my cow and chicken.
Mm-hmm.
It's some development. Milking herself. This ended up in the pilot too. I don't know if you ever saw the pilot.
Anything that they put out, I watched. It's been some time. I went back over this past weekend and watched a couple of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, yeah. These are all sketches from the pilot that ended up in the pilot.
That is fantastic. I'm going to get with you after. And then if you wouldn't mind sending those over, I'd love to put them on there to go along with this episode. Because I'm sure there's fans just out there like me that would love to see this stuff. I love it when you guys bring on stuff that started the whole movement or started, essentially what we're talking about now is fantastic.
Okay, well, you see that image there? That was what I drew the next morning. So they were very kind of a simplistic version of cow and chicken. So
Did you ever get any kickback on anything as far as, because I was watching the episode earlier where Cow gets her first job at a milking factory. And then one of my favorite lines there, and I'll bring up another line for a different show. I just looking back on it now, I was like, holy shit, how did I not hear this? When he's like, hey, would you like to go in there and give me a sandwich? She's like, I would love to squirt for you. Is there any like kickback as far as the character designs? I mean, Cow's walking around with an ass out. I mean, I gotta imagine there might have been some head shaking at least.
Well, I mean, not really with Cow. I mean, there was a little bit. I couldn't use the word teats because cow, it's an udder with teats,
Yeah.
right? They said you can't say teats, so it was always her udders, and mostly it was with the red guy. Be careful, like don't put the butt right straight in camera. Well, I mean, the guy's like, that was his character. That is his character, walking on his butt, and it's always, that was prominent at all times.
How did that come about? Because that's one thing I never saw before, and I haven't really seen since. I don't know if you've got the market cornered on ass walking, but nobody's really. I mean, what the hell is that about? I think that's fascinating for one, and funny as hell is for two.
It kind of suggested itself by seeing by developing that character, and then he didn't have any pants on. And by the way, too, that little part, when I started developing, after I wrote this little book, and then the Cartoon Network said they wanted to do a story, I realized it was like a little bit too young. Mm-hmm. So it didn't feel like it had much legs, and that's why I changed it to the dynamic of being brother and sister. I thought it was a better dynamic. And then I did the whole opening to the story, which is in the pilot, and there was something missing, and it was this other character, this red guy. And I dreamed of that character. I woke up in the middle of the night with the character, the devil character, saying, hello, it's me, the devil. I stand for all that is bad. Also, I'm naked. uh, that line and that line, the actor Charlie Adler, who did all the voices for Cow and Chicken, and who was actually the most important figure, I think, in this series. When he did his audition, he did that line, and that's the line I used in the pilot. I couldn't quite recreate the power of that delivery of "Hello, it's me, the devil." You know, that the way he said it was just so perfect. But yeah, it started as a dream, that part.
Did you have a specific voice on how you wanted all these guys to sound, or did you have any part in selecting Charlie?
I did have a, yeah, I was there for the auditions, and many people auditioned, and it was never even thought that there would be one guy doing everything. It was like we were people doing cow, we had people doing chicken, and people doing the red guy. But when Charlie came in, Charlie auditioned for all of them, and he did them in order. I mean, he could do cow talking to chicken. It was like, this guy was amazing. So once the auditions came in, there were, I don't know, maybe 75 people. It's possible. I told him, I said, this one guy is the best for all of these characters. And there was a little pushback when I said, well, yeah, but Mel Blanc did all of Warner Brother cartoons, and everybody kind of agreed, yeah, well, I guess that's true. And so we went with Charlie for all the characters.
Now, did you have any, I had talked to Fred Seibert not too long ago, last week. What was he obviously we talked about Cow and Chick and Dexter's Lab. Ed and Eddie came a little bit later, but Johnny Bravo, you know, all those heavy hitters. Did you know any of those guys beforehand, and what was that meeting like with Fred?
Did I know any of the other creators? I did. I had worked early on in my career with Danny Antonucci in Toronto. I was working in Toronto at a studio, and he had just gotten out of college, and so we worked together. But that was the only time I ever worked with him, so I knew him. And then later on, I became friends with Van Partible and Gindy. I know Gindy, and we were all friendly, but I didn't know them before.
I'm going to go ahead and drop the screen back to where it was. But I'm going to get with you, and right after this, I'll get with you and see if you couldn't send those pictures up, because like I said, a lot of those fans would love to see it.
Absolutely. So how do I stop? Oh, stop share. Sorry. There we are.
Beautiful. There we are. Now we're back. Yeah. So working with Fred, did he have, you know, he was very adamant in saying that he let you guys be the animators. He let you guys do what you wanted to say and the stories you wanted to say, which is relatively unheard of in any real industry these days. Everybody's got to have their spin. Everybody's got to have their notes, if you will. What was that process like? Was it very hands off, or?
No, that was all true. Fred's terrific, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think we all were able to do what we did. It was because of Fred. He really did have our backs.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, he's awesome. There's nothing but praise for Fred Seibert.
Yeah, he was a fantastic. Like we had to cut it a little bit short, but he's going to come back on, because there's no way that I could just talk to him for all that he's done in one little hour, just little stories that he was telling. I was like, holy shit, man, I'm writing stuff down. I was like, I got to bring this back up, bring this back up. I mean, it was just fantastic. And when I was reading over on your resume, or your portfolio, if you will, it said you directed every single episode of this series.
I did.
What was that like? I mean, you went from directing on your 8mm and showing them what you could do, and then they gave you a whole bunch of money to tell your story.
Well, there was a 15-year gap between when I started at Hanna-Barbera as a 19-year-old until when I started, when I did the pilot of Cow and Chicken. So I was like, I'd been working as an animator for 15 years. So I had more experience than just being a 19-year-old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was directing every episode. Basically, I mean, by directing, it's like you're voice directing. You're directing each episode that way. You have animation timing directors you work with. They're the ones that actually do the exposure sheets and break the scenes down, and an action takes this much time to like to lift an arm or whatever. But it's on hands-on on every episode as a director in animation. Like you're looking at every facet. All the storyboards come through. I would have many storyboard artists that we worked with, and and my process would be I would look at them. Sometimes drawings would suggest another idea, and I would just quickly draw them out. There were no scripts with Cow and Chicken. It was one of those
Really?
a board-driven show. Our scripts were actually little outlines, 3 pages at max, usually 1.5, 2 pages. They were really like there were some suggestions for dialogue, but more or less it was like a rough structure, what happens. And then it was up to the board artist to flesh that out. And then once it came back to me, then I would solidify it into the way that I felt like it was flowing, to try to make it as funny as possible. And then we went into record. A script was made from that storyboard, and then we recorded from that.
Now, was any of this ad-libbed? Like, I'm obviously there got to be some stuff in there that's ad-libbed, so I don't mean to sit here and generalize. Was anything ad-libbed? But was that encouraged with Mr. Adler? You just, hey man, do whatever you do.
Yeah, Charlie is a brilliant ad-libber. He's one of the funniest guys I've ever met, and completely comfortable behind the microphone. And he's a master that he can do almost anything. And many times it was just him flowing, him just like he has the idea, but man, he would just go off, and some of the best stuff came from that.
Before you heard Charlie's voice as Cow, Chicken, and everybody in the show, what were the voices? As a comic book guy, I always hear specific voices whenever I read whatever comic I'm reading. I always pick it from a movie or a TV show. As Kevin Conroy's Batman is always my Batman. Mark Hamill has always been my Joker. But what were some of the voices before you heard Charlie go off and just blow you guys' mind with these 300, 400, 500 characters at this point? Did you have a specific voice in your head?
No, I didn't. It was wide open. It was Charlie just came out, and just like once he did the voices, because he went right to it. Like he didn't play around with Chicken. It was just like he just did Chicken. He was doing that kind of a voice, and I go, that's insane. That's perfect. And then when Cow was this massive 6-foot character with this little tiny compressed voice, it was like the contrast was great. I couldn't have imagined that type of dynamic, and it only came from his brilliance.
What experiences were you? Because you always hear people either take what they've experienced in life and they try to put it into their art. Art imitates life. What were some of those? Did you have any stories that you really wanted to tell from your past that you wanted to put in an episode, or does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the episodes were based on things that I remembered as a kid, or that were happening with my kids at the time. And then sometimes it was just, random things from headlines of stories or whatever. But one of them, like the Cow and Chicken in the first season, it's the girls' bathroom, breaking into the girls' bathroom. And you're a kid, and you're like 10 years old, 11. That was a big deal. You don't go into the girls' bathroom and like what's in there. And so that was based on being a kid and remembering that. And there was an episode where Cow ends up with glasses, and Chicken wants to get glasses too. And I did that when I was a kid. I thought, I fudged the test so I could get glasses. I think it's not uncommon. I think a lot of kids do that. But,
yeah, I mean, everybody wants to, because with a lot of glasses, like I'm lucky right now, I'm pretty sure in 10, my eyesight's already starting to really go, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna need them eventually. But I knew when I was younger, my little sister had glasses, and she was always the smart one out of all of us. So I need glasses because it'll make me seem smarter. Maybe I'll get better grades, but it didn't happen. So still got bad grades. But
that was the genesis of that story, because Cal suddenly was smart. She had her glasses and she was actually talking more intelligently, and Chicken was kind of jealous of that.
When with Super Cow, right? We're talking Chicken or Cow here, excuse me. We're talking Super Cow, right? What was the idea to have her like Telemundo just jumping off the screen and just going for Super Cow? What was that theory?
You mean that she spoke Spanish?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, that was a suggestion from my wife at the time. She spoke Spanish, and she suggested, why doesn't she speak Spanish? And I thought, it's funny that she only speaks Spanish when she's Super Cow. It makes no sense either, because she doesn't speak Spanish as a cow, but as Super Cow, suddenly she does speak Spanish.
I always
Yeah.
thought it was fun. So whenever she'd jump off or jump in when
Uh-huh.
saving chicken from the chicken farm, bringing
Yeah.
second part of
Super
that episode.
al rescate. Yeah, exactly. To the rescue.
So how old were your kids when this cartoon came out?
6 and 10. Well, when it came out, it came out in 97. So, but the pilot I recorded, or I did in 95, 94, 95. So my daughter was 6 at the time. So my son would have been 10.
So how did they
When I
take it?
came up. Oh, well, they loved it. They were big fans, And my daughter, I remember going into her class, like up in Northern California where we lived at the time when Cow and Chicken was out. And I would come to her class and talk to the kids, and everybody watched it. Because at the time there wasn't a lot of, different, uh, other networks showing cartoons. Like most people would watch Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
So she was really happy that, that her dad was involved with this.
Did so when I talked to I can't remember who it was now. Damn, I had a thought there, but I lost. I should have written it down. I knew I was going to forget, but it is what it is. When all these shows were coming out, did any of your kids, the two that you had, did they like any of the other ones better, or were they a Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network? Because a lot of people either have one or the other. Very rarely do they go both. Were they strictly Cartoon Network kids, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I mean, they were cartoon fans, like any most kids, but because and their dad, they knew Cow and Chicken. That was, and I brought them to recordings too, so they were like involved with the process. Like they knew Charlie,
Yeah,
to Charlie's house, so they felt like really personally involved with the series.
well, that's cool. I mean, it all stemmed out of getting your daughter to go to sleep, man.
Right.
I mean,
That's right.
it just goes to show you a $1 billion idea, $1 million idea, whatever you want to call it, will come from damn near anywhere.
Yeah.
And then it spins out I Am Weasel and IR Baboon.
Yeah.
Which one were you more surprised with like just the popularity? Was it the Cow and Chicken, the initial, or were you just, not dumbfounded, but were you like shocked that there was such a big push for I Am Weasel and IR Baboon?
Yeah, it was because it was an afterthought. Because when I did the pilot and they tested the pilot, and they said, yes, we want to do a series, but we want it to be like 2 Cow and Chickens and another show to put in the middle, like a middle cartoon. And they said, do you have any other ideas? And so I said, when drawing, I actually have the drawing. Let me get it from the wall. I did this drawing. This is the original drawing. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
Okay, that was it. That was the first drawing. I just did this character, and I thought of like going against type for a weasel. Like he's not weaselly, he's heroic. And the title "I Am Weasel" comes from one of my favorite authors at the time. It was Richard Matheson, who wrote "I Am Legend." So that's what I was thinking. I am legend. I am Weasel. And so that one drawing spawned the idea. Okay, and then the idea of bringing IR Baboon was, having a foe. So I have like the monkey and the weasel from the song, and then Baboon is this guy who's not intellectually able to spar with Weasel. Yeah. And again, weasels were like, in most cartoons and most in our culture is like they're sneaky and conniving. Yeah. And this guy's the exact opposite. Yeah. So that's how that started.
Now, which one?
And it was a surprise.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and it was a surprise that it became popular, because it did spin off into its own series too.
Yes. It's gonna sound like I'm asking you which one's your favorite kid, and most of the time, whenever there's a couple cartoons like this or a couple things that people have worked on, they either don't pick or they deflect. So you can do both. It's consistent, with the podcast. But which one gave you, or which one had more creative freedom, or which one did you feel like, man, you left it all out there, artistically? Was it Cow and Chicken, or was it I Am Weasel?
It's Cow and Chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Why do
Yeah.
you think that is?
Yeah. The dynamic I liked. I thought it was sweeter. I liked, at the depths of their relationship, they did love each other,
Mhm.
even though it was silly and there was like a lot of animosity. But I think that part of it I really resonated with.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot
You
of
know what I
heart.
mean?
It's always crazy. You guys come up with these ideas and then they get animated. And essentially they're two-dimensional, but with you guys' passion, you guys' heart, you guys' wanting to say something or come across and just put your word or put your spin on something out there. You guys really make two-dimensional characters seem 3D, and it makes it so easy for us fans and me as a kid. I absolutely love this cartoon, and coming up as an adult, I like being able to go back and watch the same thing I watched and then picking up things that went way over my head as a little 10-year-old, man.
Sure.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you that it's the test of time. This thing holds up. And with everything kind of coming back, everything retro is in vogue these days. And they've done a whole bunch of stuff from Nickelodeon, from like Invader Zim and Rocko's Modern Life, got a reboot, if you will, on Netflix not too long ago, and Hey Arnold as well. Has anybody at Cartoon Network kind of tried to bring you guys back in to revisit Cow and Chicken?
No, I have not heard. I mean, I'd be interested in it. I'm still really close with Charlie.
Mhm.
He still does the voice beautifully and wonderfully. Like, yeah, it would be kind of fun to revisit this because I still have more stories.
I mean, what would be that? What could we do as fans, other than I'd write my damn senator every single day if I had to, if I knew he would do something, just to bring back. Like I said, there's nothing that makes me feel more like a kid than going back and watching a show like Cow and Chicken or Johnny Bravo, Ed, Ed and Eddie, what have you. You get transported back in time. I remember where I was when I saw this episode. I remember where I was when I heard this. It's the same thing with food. You smell something, you're instantly transported back to mom's kitchen or granny's kitchen or anything like that. I mean,
Absolutely.
what would it take, do you think? I mean, is it just a bunch of us knocking on doors, or what do you think would help?
I would. I don't think that would hurt. I think that would be. Yeah.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
that'd be awesome. I'd be totally open to it.
Well, I've got my notepad right here. I'm going to write it down.
Okay.
Call Cartoon Network. So I don't know if it'll work, but so one thing I was really interested in, because you brought up the Flintstones, but you started working on the revival of the Jetsons, for the Jetsons movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was better for you, Flintstones or Jetsons? Which one do you like more, I guess, is what I'm asking.
What I like more, the Flintstones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flintstones guy myself.
Yeah. I mean, that was my earliest memories as a kid. I mean, the Flintstones came out in 1960, I guess, but I was one. So but I grew up, that was just, they are very familiar characters. They're like, like family members, like I knew them that well. So to have the opportunity to work on a show like that, even though it's another iteration of it, it was an honor to be able to draw these characters.
What was your first, because I read up on you, and then they were saying that Rocky and Bullwinkle was huge for you. Was it
Yeah.
your biggest inspiration? Is it safe to say? Or
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just for like the snappiness of humor. Like, as a kid, I mean, again, like you said, a lot of things went right over my head. For the most part, though, it was like, I really dug that fast talking back and forth, and how ridiculous the stories were.
yeah, and it was fucking flying squirrel and a moose. I mean, it was one of those ones, because a lot of this stuff I came on to, with the exception of that Renaissance boom with the cartoons that you were a part of and you helped usher in. I saw a lot of the Flintstones, obviously, in rerun or back when they put them on Cartoon Network.
Sure.
And the same thing with Rocky and Bullwinkle. I absolutely loved that cartoon. And it was crazy to see just how far, I guess, cartoons had come, right? So you had the Flintstones, Rocky and Bullwinkle, and then the Jetsons, and you mix a whole bunch of other things in there, and then you get to things like Cow and Chicken and Dexter's Lab. When you started pulling or working with the people to put this show together for Cow and Chicken? You had mentioned one of the guys is your mentor. Was there anybody else that you sought out that you were like, I really need this guy's a wealth of knowledge, or this woman's a wealth of knowledge? Is there anybody you really wanted to work with that you got to work with?
You mean for Cow and Chicken
For
specifically?
Cow and Chicken, or any show that you've actually worked on, was there anybody you sought out and you just had to have them, you know?
Well, the only thing that comes to mind right now is just with the actors. When I was casting the show,
Mhm.
the character of Flem, many actors came in to do Flem,
Mhm.
and Howard Morris came in, and I was a big Andy Griffith fan.
Yeah.
And Ernest T. Bass was one of my all-time favorite characters. I don't know if you've ever watched the reruns of the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah.
One with Barney Fife, and Ernest T. Bass was that mountain man guy, and so Howard Morris came in, and his voice was also my childhood. He did a lot of Hanna-Barbera cartoons in the '60s. Yeah, Squiddly Diddly. I think he was on multiple cartoons. So he auditioned. Here's this guy in his mid-70s auditioning for the part of an 11-year-old boy, and it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. And so I was honored and thrilled to be working with Howard Morris, and he was a great guy on top of that. And also he was one of the pioneers of television. He worked with Mel Brooks back in the '40s, like early TV. So it was an honor to work with Howard Morris.
Did you I always like, now if you don't want to talk about it, but I always like asking, not so much personal questions, but what was the best time you ever spent with him? Do you have any cool stories that you could share?
With Howard?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, he did some voices, but usually a lot of you guys would go out and get drinks, or you go have dinner or something like
Yeah.
that. Is there anything that you could, talk about with him?
Yeah. I mean, he said some things that were like almost like kind of sad, really. He was just talking about like it's as being somebody of his stature who started it in the, he really did start television. He was sad that he had to audition over and over and over. Like in the '60s, he directed more television series than he did voice acting. He was like a big time director. Like he directed episodes of Andy Griffith, and I think he directed episodes of like Bob Newhart, early Bob Newhart. I mean, he was a big time television guy, but he was just lamenting that he had to like re-audition, and people say, "Who are you? What have you done?"
Yeah.
And it was that part of the Hollywood was sad for him, because like but I should probably remember a better story than that for you, because he was not a bellyacre at all. He was quite great,
Yeah. No, it's a perfect story. Like I said, I always like getting just a little bit from you guys, because what I'm doing now is essentially what you had with him. I'm looking up to you, and like I said, most people look at it as just another cartoon, man. Growing up, I had a pretty easy life. I had a mom. Dad wasn't really in the picture. Dad wasn't in the picture. Wasn't in the picture at all. And I found a lot of comfort in these things, almost like you probably found a lot of comfort in watching him, or listening, or watching the stuff that he directed, voice acted, or whatever he was in. So I like asking you guys stories about your mentors or your heroes or stuff like that, because not only does it make, the whole process really mean something, but it also goes and says that, hey man, I know where I came from. Hey, I know where I started, or hey, I know who I looked up to. And you kind of bring them along, or you kind of give thanks. You give them their roses while they're here, And this year has been a complete, absolute shitty year. 2020, I mean, we've lost so many people that have been influential. I mean, between Kobe and Chadwick, and just last week it was Sean Connery and Alex Trebek and Eddie Van Halen. It's just been a shitty year.
Yeah, sure.
So to see that you got to work with somebody that you had high on a pedestal, and then he was a good guy. They always say never meet your heroes, right?
Yeah.
Every hero of mine, with the exception of one, so I'm shooting, one for like or 99 for 100 type of thing.
Yeah.
Have all been fucking fantastic people.
Okay.
I mean, you're in that list as well. Like I said, man, I had so much comfort watching this stuff, and then when I deployed and I took this stuff overseas with me, you guys got me to not think about missing my wife and my son. You guys were able, as silly as it might sound, for a small fraction of a time, take my head, my brain and put it somewhere good, put it somewhere I wasn't depressed, put it somewhere where I wasn't sad, right? And I can't thank you guys enough for that. I mean, like I said, most people look at it as just a cartoon, man, but this shit was life for me when I was growing up, and it really still is. And now I'm showing these things to my son, and it's funny seeing him scratch his head at the same kind of stuff that that went over my head,
Sure.
but now I'm sitting there and experiencing it with him, right? So it's fantastic. And like I said, I just can't thank you enough for that. I wanted to, kind of ring it in and start to wrap it up, because we are getting a little bit close to that time, and I don't want to keep you too long. I know you got some shit to do, but what were some of your favorite episodes when you look back at the 2-3 seasons that you did with Cow and Chicken and the multiple ones you do with I Am Baboon, I'm sorry, my head is all over the place today.
Right.
But what were some of your favorite cartoon or favorite episodes of Cow and Chicken?
One that comes to mind right now is the orthodontic police. And that was based on my experience too, because I had braces as a kid and there was a lot of pain involved. And I always imagined, not only did you have wires, I think I had a strap on my head, and I was imagining motors and pulleys. And that's what the impetus of that story was. And then, I liked how that one turned out too. It's ridiculous.
There's one, so I had braces as an adult, so I can completely understand. I wish I would have done it, because it would have been a lot cheaper if my mom paid for it when I was like 12 when she offered. But I was like, nah, man, people are going to like me for my personality. They don't give a shit about my smile. Then you start getting older, and then you notice that, I'm not smiling in pictures, or I just don't cover my mouth. Then I went and paid for it, and it was expensive as hell. So, but that's neither here nor there. One of those characters that I love that you guys made was Boneless Chicken.
Yes.
Cow and Chicken's cousin. What was the thought process, or how did that one even come up? He's like, let's do a chicken, but he's got no bones.
That was the first season too. That was really super early on. And to me, the title just suggested itself, because that's an actual item, a boneless chicken. You order boneless chicken. Yeah. I thought it'd be funny if that was a character. It was like his uncle. And also to make him as a babysitter too, which is ridiculous because he can't move. So that's how that started. And he ends up getting thrown on the roof, and that's when Cal gets up on the roof, and then she's thinks that she's going to die instantly, and then immediately goes to thinking she's going to eat her uncle.
Just to sit there and think, because if you take a look back and you look at the culture in the 90s, and I can't really look at it as far as like a personal, a personal experience from it. But looking back on it now, right, and sitting there thinking all the crazy shit that went on in my life, a boneless uncle watching you isn't really that far from, what really happened in the 90s. I mean, I would have my great aunt, Aunt Marianne, and my great uncle Bob come down every summer for us, and when we were in all the way up until 5th grade, and he would watch my brother, me, and my little sister. And whenever they were in, we didn't get any cartoon time whatsoever, right? We only had one TV in the house, and they were hooked on Walker, Texas Ranger, In the Heat of the Night, the Andy Griffith Show, Designing Women, all these old school shows. And they would just sit there like they had no bones on the couch, vegging out, so I could kind of equate oh man, this is my Uncle Bob, but it's a chicken. He's got no bones.
That's funny.
Yeah. So what were some of the characters that you probably wanted to get in there that you might not have gotten in there, or they just pretty much let you do what you wanted to do?
Pretty much. I mean, there are a lot of stories that didn't get made, because to get a story made, you actually had to do it was 6-to-1 ratio. You come up with 6 ideas, and then one would get green light. Okay, go. We like that one. So there's, out of 102 Cow and Chicken episodes, there's probably 600 ideas. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I for the most part, I think everything that I really wanted to get in got in. There wasn't anything I wish this one would have been done. I was pretty happy with what we did.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, a lot of people man, I wish I could have done more. Obviously, we want you to do more Cow and Chicken. That's what we really want. But if, say, hypothetically speaking, right, Time Machine next year comes out, they're like, hey, we're going to do a Cow and Chicken, right? Obviously, you're not going to spoil anything, but would you pick up right where they left off, or would you want to do that whole flash forward sequence?
You mean making it now?
A little bit older, yeah, bringing them out. They did it with Rocco. They pulled them out and they put him in 2018, I think, is when the last Rocco came in.
Yeah, well, I was trying to not put it into a specific time. It wasn't like, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
didn't want to be too topical, although I'm sure there's something topical in there. It just happens, you know. But I think that for the most part, there is no time. They're not in a set time,
Yeah.
you know, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I got you. So
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you wanted to make them older, if you wanted to pick up pretty much right where they left off.
I would keep them as brother and sister, you know, and 10, 11 and 7 and 11 years old. The cow is supposed to be 7,
Yeah.
chicken is 11.
Now, did you pull any of your kids' personalities or any of their little quirks and put them into Cow and Chicken?
Not really. No, no,
No?
no. Just maybe like, you know, like typical brother sister, you know, they
Yeah,
pick
they
at each
clash.
other, but then they did love each other.
Okay. So I always, like I said, I always like asking little questions like that because sometimes you'll either pull like, oh, that was my personality, or I took
Uh-huh.
my little daughter's personality and I put them in there. What was the thought when they saw this? They were like, holy shit, dad animates, dad makes cartoons. This is great. I mean, was it open reception right off the gate, or did you have to talk them into it to watching it, or were they just, man, this is
No, no, that was just like part of their life. I mean, I was doing it, they're drawing, you know, I was working as an animator their whole life.
yeah,
So it was nothing strange, just normal. That's just the way it is. Like all dads have a TV show in their mind. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't a big deal made of it. It wasn't like, you know, this is different. You know, this is just their life.
Did they show that artistic bug when watching you draw and animate and stuff like that? Did they want to do what dad did?
Uh, Not really. My son's funny. He's a funny guy, but never
Yeah,
got into this line. And my daughter worked in the studio system a little bit. She's a mom right now,
yeah.
raising a small son.
Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, yeah. But she's very creative, very
Yeah.
creative. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always interesting to see like which one kind of gravitates towards you or your wife, or, you know, in
Mhm.
between type of thing. So
Sure.
um, last couple questions. When it's all said and done and David Feiss is sitting back in his chair 30, 40, 50 years from now, you know, you've said everything you've wanted to really say. And you think about the time that you spent since 19 with Cartoon Network and Hanna-Barbera and everything in between, everything that you've done, you know, career-wise, as a parent, as a friend, as a brother, as a husband. What are some of the thoughts that, you know, just get brought up whenever you think about the artwork and the animation, the cartoons that you have made that have touched so many lives? I mean, what gets brought out when you start thinking about what you've done?
Well, I mean, I go back to Cow and Chicken because it was so international. It's plays and it still plays around the world. That the feeling that I was able to create something that has touched people, it means an awful lot to me.
Mhm.
Like to hear what your story, it means a lot. And I appreciate you telling me too. And I'm glad I was able to make you bring you happiness as a child and as an adult now. Like I've traveled the world. I went to like a conference in Italy, an animation conference, and people know my show in Italy. I've never been to Italy. I go there and people know it. It's just a really an amazing feeling. I went to South America. I was in Chile. The same thing. People came up. Someone had tears in their eyes. Said, "You influenced my childhood so much." So that's very satisfying to know that I did something that's silly too, that I enjoyed doing,
Yeah.
that was fun to do, that means so much to people all around the world. It's an amazing feeling.
No, I can only imagine, man. Like you said, man, us fans are lucky that David is here. We're lucky that David made Cow and Chicken with all the help that you had with the voice acting with Charlie
Mhm.
and everybody that you had either helping you write, helping you storyboard, giving you little ideas, or hey, maybe this way. You know, I mean, we really couldn't get here without all of that. And like I said, we all thank you for what you've done. Is there anything, as we're wrapping up here, is there anything that you're working on now that we can kind of try to push traffic towards? You writing a book, you trying to do a new show? Where can we tell people to go?
Well, I mean, recently, last few years, I did a children's book that actually was published. It's called Ernest Hummingbird.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there was an app that was made for it, like at the App Store.
Mhm.
Um, I'm still writing books too
Yeah.
on my spare time. I'm working in the studios. I mean, I work mostly do story now for feature film. I'm working with Illumination.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, just look. I have ideas that I would love to get to pitch. I had that are sitting on my desktop right now.
Mhm.
But yeah, I plan on pitching more, and I'd like to get back into television. And if there was an opportunity to do Cow and Chicken again, I would jump at it.
Have you thought about now? I'm not sure how rights and all of that work as far as your work and everything. Um, but is it possible that you could take Cow and Chicken and maybe put it on a Kickstarter and let the fans say, "Hey, man, let's throw some money at this shit and get it made"? Or
No, yeah, to get a show on the air like Cow and Chicken, the rights are owned by, was at the time Cartoon Network, then later became Turner, then became Warner Brothers.
yeah,
So it's actually Warner Communications, or now AT&T, I guess, right? So, but that's okay. I mean, the trade-off was well worth it,
mm-hmm.
to get the show on the air. So yeah, I couldn't take the characters and do it myself.
Okay. Now, with that being said, is there like you hear with movies, especially with franchises, like let's just say Spider-Man, they got to make a Spider-Man every so often with Sony, or it reverts back to Marvel.
Hmm.
Is that the same with animation? Like if they don't do anything with it in so long, the rights revert back to you, or?
I don't think so. I could be wrong.
Mhm.
I have not heard of that one for cartoons.
Now, last question, and I'll let you get back to doing whatever you're going to do today, man. When you sit down and you came from a really, I don't want to say murderer's row, but it's like a murderer's row of just like all these quote unquote killers with cartoons, right? Like I said, Danny, Jendi. You had John Zell-Dilworth with Courage. You know, you had Danny with Ed, Ed, and Eddie. And the mind is escaping me as far as Dexter's Lab goes. I think that was Jendi.
Gindi, it was Gindi, Tartakovsky, and then Van Partible for Johnny
Bravo. If you couldn't pick Cow and Chicken as your favorite from that what a cartoon, or that, just like I said, that murderer's row of just amazing cartoon after amazing cartoon, what were some of your favorite ones to really watch or listen to or see the storyboard or the art for?
Of those cartoons?
Yeah, just of that I think they did 48 for what a cartoon, or cartoon whenever they brought up those things in there.
52. There were 52 that
52.
we got. Yeah. Like of those 52, which one do you think?
Yeah, which ones did you like the most, or which ones did you just seek out? You had to look at the art, I had to listen to the voice cast, or I just wanted to absorb.
I mean, they're all pretty great. I mean, like design wise, I thought Gindy's show and Craig McCracken's show, like they're design wise, they're brilliant. They're like really fun. And you know, these guys were all super young guys when they did it.
Yeah.
They just came out of college. It was pretty amazing actually to see young people be able to do such professional work. You know, in Van's show, I like Van's his style of animation. He was a big fan of the Chuck Jones cartoon, the Dover Boys. So all that kind of movement was kind of cool to see. Plus, I like Van. Van and I are still friends, and there are a lot of really great ones. Like it's really hard to pick. I guess design wise, though, I think Powerpuff Girls look to me, you know, and it's not my style, but I really admire how, you know, the style that he has. And
yeah, it's just, I like how there was we're preaching diversity, which we need to be preaching these days. You know, everybody's got a different take on something, whether what you look like, where you grew up at, where you come from, that type of stuff. Everybody's got a story, and it's always different than what somebody's going to say. You know, so it was always nice seeing nothing looked like a cookie cutter during that renaissance that you guys were a part of for animation and cartooning.
Right.
Nothing looked the same. Nothing looked identical like it kind of does now. And I think we're kind of missing people like you and people like you just mentioned. So I'm hoping one day that we can get you back in here. Like I said, I'll do whatever I can. Whoever will listen to me, I don't know if anybody's going to listen to me, but I'll sit there and talk until I can't talk no more to get you guys back in here. And like I said, you guys have still got stuff to say. You still got stuff you want to say. And I guess that's just the process. This has been a fun talk. I know I got you early. But I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad you chose to do this. Are you a part of social media or anything like that where we can kind of push traffic towards your social media page or anything like that?
Not.
Oh man, you're already winning at fucking 10 o'clock in the morning. You're not a part of social media. It's fantastic. It's depressing to get on that shit. But nonetheless, man, this has been David Feiss. I have been Julian with What's in My Head Pod. You can follow us over all sorts of social media places that David's not a part of because he doesn't want to be depressed like the rest of us. Thank you again, man. I appreciate it. And thank you for making one of the greatest cartoons of all time. Excuse me.
Thank you, Julian. Appreciate it.
No problem, David. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Take care.
This podcast was presented by the Epic Sewers Podcast Network, the home of all your pop culture podcast needs, with shows like Epic Tales from the Sewer, the Spoiler Force Podcast, CreatorCon Q&A, Comic Watchers, and the What's in My Head Podcast. Follow us on this journey and get down and nerdy as we bring you the best in pop culture.